I recently got a pay raise at my corporate job, and it was pretty garbage, to be honest. To say that I was disappointed is much of an understatement. I was honestly raging for a little bit after hearing and finding out what I got, especially considering how much work I had put in this year compared to last year's. So you can say that I'm salty or coping, but just hear me out. In previous years, my pay raises were actually pretty good, and don't get me wrong, those felt great, but at the time, I had no idea how I earned them. I didn't think I was putting in exceptional hours. I didn't think I was taking on difficult tasks per se. I was just doing my time. This year was different. I had worked my ass off and I got a pretty terrible pay raise, which honestly, to be for transparency, didn't even offset inflation. An insult to injury, this was the year that I really decided to take it under my belt to work more hours, take on more tasks and projects, design and implement very technical and high impact features on my own. And I even received really good feedback from my managers, things like exceeding and meeting all expectations across the board for multiple consecutive quarters. Got a lot of positive feedback, and the constructive criticism that I got in areas that I could improve were pretty minimal for the most part. I'd even asked for more feedback at some points, more consistent feedback, just so I could continue improving as an engineer. And despite all that, all the extra work I was doing, and the confidence I had in myself that I had performed well this year, my pay raise really didn't reflect that in my eyes. So I think my biggest gripe with the process of determining pay raises is the black box nature of how they work. I feel like the large majority of companies never really give you transparency into what dictates your raise. And a lot of different people will give you different feedback in this area. For example, they might say, oh, maybe you should work longer hours. If that was truly a dictator, I had worked longer hours this year quantitatively than I have in previous years. You could say the same thing about taking on more tasks. I took on significantly more tasks, had a lot more initiative and ownership over features and projects than I had ever before. If you want to criticize my performance, my quarterly reviews and my meetings with my managers say that I've been meeting and exceeding all. So, my point here is not to sit here and complain. My point is to say that the little line that companies feed you honestly is just some way to make you feel like you're in control. My point here is that if you ask your manager, if you ask your company or anyone in the managerial chain, what are things that you can do to dictate your pay raise, to improve your pay raise, they're always going to give you that boilerplate corporate answer, which is work longer hours, put in more effort, improve in the areas based on your feedback, right? They don't give you any quantitative measure, not how many more hours, not how many more tasks. It's always this boilerplate answer. And the reason being is that unless your manager is super far up into the chain, they probably don't even know how yours or their pay raises are calculated themselves. And so somehow there is just this omniscient being that decides employee pay raises at your company. And that omniscient being, if you ask me, is just a black box of BS. As I mentioned before, a lot of these managers don't even know how these raises are calculated. And if they do, the reason they're not transparent about it is because even they know how ridiculous the formula could be. And if they had revealed exactly what went into this algorithm, they know they would get backlash. You can work your tail off and barely get a pay raise simply because you are paid fairly according to the market average. You can also stay an extra 4 hours a day, be an exceptional performer, and get breadcrumbs because the company decided to invest $80 billion dollars into AI and they can no longer afford to give you an extra 20K a year. The idea of increasing your pay raise by some measly amount is the equivalent of dangling a carrot in front of a pig on a treadmill. Companies will make you feel like you're in control of your pay raises when in reality, you hold maybe 20% of the reins while the company decides what to give you. You're essentially on your knees getting spanked by your CEO as you beg for a nickel. Thinking about it in this way helped me move on and get over the fact that I wasn't really happy with what my company decided to feed me. Because at the end of the day, whether my company gave me $2,000 or $30,000, both of those figures are pretty much just nickels trickling down the chain. And whether they give me 7 cents or a nickel, it it really doesn't matter that much to the person controlling the black box. So it may sound like I'm just sitting here complaining about how the system is all BS and whatnot, but at the end of the day, framing the situation as these are things that I can control and are worth my time versus these are things that are majorly out of my control and just a waste of my energy really helped me to move on and to get over the feelings of disappointment and dissatisfaction that I initially had when I found out what my pay raise was. I just realized that my energy is worth more than whatever my raise could have been. Whether it's an extra 5 grand a year they give me or 10 grand a year they give me, if you really break down the numbers, take out the taxes, you're really getting mincemeat as a raise regardless. That company isn't going to throw you an extra 200 grand a year. They're not going to throw you life-changing money. And they know that. The point is to keep the grunts, the slaves in line and to make them feel like they have more control than they actually do. If your company is unwilling to give you the raise you grinded for, then give them the effort they deserve. Do enough to keep your job and meet expectations, but nothing else. If that means doing your 40 and then after doing so you go home, you do that. If that means finishing tasks and never meeting with clients because you don't have to, then do that. Finish those tasks and then go home and spend time with your girlfriend or go home and spend time with your friends. Don't do 120K worth of work if you're only getting 90K. Corporate forward progression is real. So be very intentional with what you let your company know you're capable of because it can 100% backfire on you. And what I mean by forward progression is the idea that the more you do, the more effort you put in, that level of energy and effort you give your company becomes their new understanding of your baseline. And if for one quarter, if for 1 year you ever decide to take your foot off the gas and fall anywhere below your baseline, they're going to see that and you're going to get punished for that. So I see a lot of people around my age start their first job and grind the hell out of it. They stay twice as long, they take on more than they can chew just so they can get ahead on their boss's brownie list. At least as an engineer in tech, this rarely rewards you. I can't really speak for finance, but I know that this sort of mindset is prevalent there as well. All this really does is tells your manager who has bandwidth to take on this really complicated task that nobody else wants to do, all while paying you the same crumbs as everybody else. Now that you've revealed what you're capable of and willing to do, that becomes your company's new baseline for you. And anything you do below that level becomes lackluster performance from you. So if you grinded your way in the beginning, the first 1 year, burned yourself out to hell, and then you decide to take your foot off the gas, even if you're still outperforming a lot of your teammates, 9 times out of 10, they're going to see that degradation in your performance. And they're going to say, oh, you're falling below expectations. Not company expectations, but their expectations of you. It's pretty apparent that the way I feel about this issue is that it's not worth throwing your energy away, your ever so valuable time and energy, for minuscule amounts of extra money. To control that 10-20% of your raise that you actually have control over is not worth the amount of energy. The ROI isn't favorable. My advice is apply your energy elsewhere. Life is more than a cubicle and annual vacations. Life should be connections, nights out with friends, time for stress, and time for decompression, and just making memories. Balancing everything you have to do with everything you want to do is a valuable skill. So treat your time like money. If an experience, an item, a stock, you name it, isn't going to yield you ROI, why even invest in it? Now apply that same mindset to your job. If an extra 10 hours a week isn't going to yield you ROI on your efforts, why bother? At the end of the day, your pay raise isn't going to make you rich. You will not be rich off a salary. If wealth is what you want, invest your time into a business or a side hustle, or even just invest your time in preparing to hop to another company that is going to boost your pay more than 3 years worth of pay raises by staying at your current place. If making memories is what you value out of life, invest your time into friends, travel, and just overall being happy. If licking your company's boots is what you truly want out of life, go ahead and invest your time into that. Nobody's stopping you. And I mentioned all these things that you can choose to value. These are things that can change over time. These are dynamic. It's not like you pick one thing to value and that's the only thing you can value for the rest of your life. Adjust your values based on your position in life. For the first few years of working in corporate, I valued my company. My boots were on the ground, licking the company's boots. I did that for a few years. And then recently, I decided that I wanted to be happy, that I wanted to invest my time elsewhere. And so I just shifted my values. At the end of it all, figure out what you value the most in life and divide your eggs into baskets accordingly.